Good morning, everybody. Uh, Facing unprecedented challenges, Lebanon is going through a multidimensional crisis with three aspects: identity, governance, and socio-economic considerations. Today, the country is crumbling under a dramatic stagflation. Ali has always been proactive, looking after the interests of industrialists as such, but nevertheless, we have always insisted that we are not defending our own interests from a pure business perspective and acting as a lobby for that matter, but rather we are acting as conscious and responsible citizens sensitive to the socio-economic role that industry plays in the economy, providing jobs and also ensuring sustainable development. We aimed for excellence as an association. We have been collaborating with SAIPI to improve our standards, to have positive impact on services provided to our members, and to put out timely policy recommendations at many levels. We have for that come up with many programs and suggested through times several action plans and solutions. The latest comprehensive one is the socio-economic vision we have put forward in 2015 based on a holistic economic stimulus measure approach, followed by a series of position papers on basic subjects concerning our use, the role of industry on various aspects of life, such as energy, environment, waste management, education, job creation, and exports. Needless to say that, had the authorities applied even part of it then, we would certainly have avoided to a large extent the socio-economic crisis we are going through today. All along, Ali has collaborated closely with CEPI, which has also helped us in several projects, such as exports opportunities, which was prepared with the LCPC Center. Today, we are very happy that CEPI is once again assisting us to relaunch our actual views on general policy and our position on specific issues in collaboration with a leading economist in Lebanon, Dr. Sami Nader, putting forward our views concerning Ali's role. This is particularly important today as we are addressing new challenges called by the situation and by the possible solutions as suggested or even to be imposed by the IMF. While we all agree that all the measures should be taken to reduce the debt in absolute terms and to reduce the debt service, however, we have been always, as we have always been advancing, the real issue is in fact reducing the debt to GDP ratio. Furthermore, it is also imperative that we raise the GDP, particularly that many studies forecast a GDP of $30 billion, leading at this low level to real miseries for our society. We are confident that Lebanon has the capacities to have a much higher GDP, meaning a higher per capita income, should we focus again on our productive sectors. This has been suggested by many studies, not the least of which is McKinsey. Today, as we are putting forward our analysis and our position papers as prepared by Dr. Nader and highlighting industry's role, we are grateful to SAIPI for their continuous support, and I would like at this stage to thank SAIPI and Dr. Nader and the teams, as well as all Ali's members who have actively participated in the formulation of these policies. Thank you all again, and we look forward to our dynamic role in the new socio-economic solution for Lebanon and for the use of Lebanon. The private sector has proved to be the real driver of the economy. We can now claim that although it took our officials some long time, nevertheless, they acknowledge at last that industry is the key driver of the private sector. We look forward to collaborating with the multilateral institutions who are seeking to help out Lebanon. Lebanon cannot fail. Lebanon is more than a country, it's a message. We are indeed facing unprecedented challenges, but as industrialists, we can say, as Joseph Kennedy Sr. said, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. We have shown that although Lebanon is a small country, it still offers a world of opportunities. by their dedication and determination, but by their agility and their innovation, industrialists have shown that Lebanon can. With our vision and proposal, Ali suggests a true economic recovery. It is a key to any solution, along with the financial component proposed by many to Lebanon's crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadi. I would like to take this opportunity. My name is Karim Shaban, and I represent the Center for International Private Enterprise in the Levant region. I just want to give you just a brief overview of the center. The center is a non-governmental organization. It's based in Washington, D.C., and it's a non-for-profit. We have offices in around 20 countries around the world, and we operate right at the nexus of promoting democracy and economic development. We work in 5 major areas, which is enterprise ecosystems, building up the ecosystems necessary for enterprises to flourish and grow and drive economic growth. We work in the area of business advocacy on democratic governance. We work in the area of anti-corruption and ethics and trade facilitation. We've been operating in Lebanon for a number of years, and we're very proud of our partnership with the Association of Lebanese Industrialists, which spans now multiple years, and we were able to see great achievements and successes together in helping ALI achieve its vision for excellence in serving its members, in promoting and helping to grow the industrial sector and into contributing to the Lebanese economy overall. This now partnership is more important than ever in helping the country navigate through the multiple layers of crises that it is facing. So with that, I don't want to take too much time. I want to thank you again, Dr. Fadi, and the entire ALI team for their dedication and continued drive to help Lebanon and help the industrial sector. And at SIPE, we are firm believers that real economic growth and real resilience and economic recovery really stems from a partnership between the private sector, civil society, and government in creating responsive policies that are really grounded by the needs of industrialists and the economy at large. So thanks again, Dr. Fadi. I want to turn it over to you now, Paul.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I think the launch today of the policy agenda is an extremely important event. I think that it is, I truly believe it is the first of its kind when it comes to a business association in Lebanon. First of all, I would like to say a couple of words regarding the association and its partnership with SIPE. The association has been always thriving towards excellence. This is the motto of the association. This is what we try to achieve on an association level, and this is typically trying to reflect our members' behavior, because our members also try to strive towards excellence. In that effect, we keep on trying to improve on our standards, and our partnership with SIPE is extremely important in that sense, because it gives us also access to other associations around the world and to check best practices on the association level to achieve a higher standard, whether it comes to membership services, which we are today, as we speak, looking at overhauling, improving our membership services to better suit the situation, the crisis, and to make sure we look at the future, towards the future. I am going to talk a bit about the 2 matters that are extremely important in our view. The COVID response. This is not part of the policy agenda per se. It was not part of it. No one was expecting a COVID situation or pandemic situation in the country. Just to give our attendees just an idea, the policy agenda has been in the works for already a couple of years. And so that was predating, if we want to call it the pandemic. But when the pandemic came along, obviously we have to spring into action, and the association did quite a lot on that level. I will go over the COVID response in a bit, and then I will talk a bit about the policy agenda and its importance before turning it over to Dr. Sami Nader to go into the details of that. If you may, I will share my screen if I manage to do that. Just the same. There you go. Okay, I hope you're seeing my screen. So, sorry. There you go. Okay, so this is a COVID report that we drew just to go over all of the effort that has been put when it came to COVID response. In a nutshell, we all went through this pandemic, and it's still ongoing. We have to be careful as we go forward further. But typically what we notice is that the governments all around the world were a bit at a loss on how to deal with this pandemic and how to react from a economic perspective, and how to enforce lockdowns and as such. We as an association did not accept just to be on the receiving end of the matter, and wanted to be proactive. So what we did is that we created a unit within the association that was dealing on a daily basis with its governmental counterpart to make sure that we create some sort of structure towards that end. And I think we were the only association who did that. So we managed to have the government, we lobbied the government to have a seat at the table when it comes to creating a system to allow some manufacturing facilities to operate during the pandemic. To that end, we did not just talk about it, we actually created the unit. The unit was in direct communication with the governmental agencies and was lobbying on a daily basis to make sure that the companies that can open without affecting any health related issue would do so without any problem. Because in reality, the approach of all the governments would be a broad stroke approach, which mostly damages the economy for no reason. It is important to lock down when it is needed, but it's also important to open when it's needed. Locking down across the board without going into the details is extremely damaging. Another matter that was also done is that, so if you look at it, we approached it as a membership service. So the unit inside the association was dealing with the companies on a one-to-one basis, trying to get them the permits, trying to get their voices to the government to make sure that those units still run. We looked at it also from a policy proposal perspective, which is extremely important. We did not wait for the government to come up with its own policy. We propose our own policy when it comes to how to regulate. So we said we're going to regulate ourselves before you ask us to regulate. And doing so was extremely important because they took our proposal as is and implemented it in their plan. And that is extremely important, which means that we created the policy proposal, we lobbied for it, and we got it done, which is extremely important because we know better how to regulate more efficiently our systems. It is in our interest to run safely, but to run. And then the last part of the approach was the member and sectoral engagement. So after we did all that, and you'll see in a couple of graphs here, we did two matters in engaging the members and the sector at large, which were we worked with a company to audit on a very let's say on a very broad level companies across Lebanon, manufacturing plants across Lebanon, to check whether they are compliant with safety measures. And we also, we did that for our members and we did that for our non-members as well. So we wanted to see how would it be on a large scale. The second thing that we did is that we created a couple of surveys to check afterwards what was the satisfaction and how we can do things a bit better from a membership perspective as a service to be able to help better and figure out the solutions even faster. So without further ado, I'm not going to go over all the details, but just in a nutshell, This is a report that shows the results of the audit that GWR as a company did. And we can see that the compliance is relatively extremely high. We're talking about an average which is above 85% across Lebanon, which is extremely high compared with other countries. It's much higher than other countries, which proves that the private sector does auto-regulate. It does not wait for the government to put regulations because it's their own interest. We looked also between members and non-members. We see that it is practically the same. This is the geographic distribution. I'm not going to go over all of them, but what is important though is that if we go towards the questionnaires that we asked a bit later, we see that, there you go. If we see the rating of the members, the way they looked at the service of the unit, how it performed, and we see that it was overwhelmingly positive, between 4 and 5 over 5. This is as well their vision of whether, or their feeling whether or not they were helped by this unit, and we see that's also overwhelmingly the case, 63%. And I wanted to go to that place, that this is extremely important, just to show how important it is for an association to do its job properly. This shows how much the association, in the view of the person who's answering, that is not our view, that's the surveyed companies, how much did the service actually help them prevent losses. And we see that approximately 64% were above $10,000. 38% of those were above $50,000. So we see that there is an actual impact for members when they are part of the association, and the association is lobbying on their behalf, is proposing services on their behalf. I'm not going to go over all of the report. The report will be available, but this is just important to highlight those matters. I think Karim would like to pop up a question on Zoom right now to our attendees. This is part of our effort to overhaul our stakeholder engagement platform. We're trying to figure out new technologies to engage with our stakeholders in a way that is faster, easier, much shorter. We need to make sure that we can engage with them. So you can see now on your screens, it's just a one question. It's within Zoom, and it gets tabulated automatically.
Thank you, Paul. So as you see now on the screen, the question asks, based on what you heard from Paul, how do you evaluate ALI's COVID-19 pandemic response? The answer options are not effective, needs improvement, effective, and can achieve greater impact if sustained, and very effective, and has the potential to achieve great tangible outcomes. So I'll just give you a few seconds to vote. And while you do that, I wanted to also mention something that I missed, that SAIP is an affiliate of the U.S. Chambers of Commerce in DC, and is also one of the core institutes of the National Endowment for Democracy. And with that, I see here that we have about 90%. Okay, so I'm gonna end the poll here. And let's see, I can also share the results with you. And I want to also remind our guests that you can ask questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will be sure to address your questions throughout the session, and also we'll have some times at the end of the session. So the 20% says needs improvement, 50% says effective and can achieve greater impact if sustained and continued, and 30% evaluate ALI's COVID-19 pandemic response as very effective and has the potential to achieve great tangible outcomes. Thank you so much for voting, and we will have 2 more polls as well before we end our session today. Okay, Paul, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, now back to the main topic, I think, of this conference, or this webinar. It's the policy agenda. I will not go too much into details because I'll leave that to Dr. Sami, but just a couple of points. I think as Dr. Fadi has made it very clear, today we are at a very, let's say, critical junction in our economic history and our history at large. It is extremely important that business association play a major role in shaping our economic future. and based on actual policies and policies that are based that are backed with facts and not just based on ideology. It's also important that as we go further, we know very well that there is a very big credibility issue when it comes to the government. So multilateral organizations will be looking for a private sector partner to build and to help build the strategic vision for Lebanon as we go further, and maybe try to push that onto the politicians and maybe in a way or another, we're going to call it force them into moving towards a proper strategic vision for the country and not just an ad hoc response for every single crisis that occurs. To that end, we at the association took the decision to create a policy agenda that is easily can be used as a platform, if you want to call that, to further discuss the policy topics with the multilaterals, with local organizations as well, building obviously on the history of the association, as Dr. Fadi said, in 2015, the socioeconomic holistic approach, the various policy papers that have been written all over the years, all of that was looked at and embedded in the policy agenda. What we're looking for right now is a strategic vision, or what we're looking at right now is a strategic vision which would look at solutions that are short term. This is us playing firefighters, and medium term and even long term. Some of our policy topics are very, very short term and very important right now, like monetary policy, fiscal policy, but we're also looking at the future. We're looking at Industry 4.0. We're looking at the effect of overhauling the educational sector in order to propose a vision. We're looking at a vision again. We want a vision for the country. We're not just trying to survive. This is not in our interest. We want to thrive and not only survive. So to that end, we did the policy agenda. We are developing the policy papers, which take the topic of every policy topic, and we get a deep dive in it, backed with evidence. Dr. Sami will explain the methodology. And this is extremely important as we go further. Now, the multilateral organizations, they have a document to discuss with us. We can sit down and talk about it and see how we can turn those into real policies at the government level. Dr. Sami, I think I'll leave the floor to you. I will help you out I will bring up the policy agenda on the screen so that you can, and you tell me if you want to switch from one page to the others so that I can follow up with you.
Okay, many thanks, Paul. Let me first thank Ali for their trust, President Fadi, Paul, Karim from CIPE, Talal. It has been a real honor and pleasure to work with you at this very particular moment of the history of our country. And this, I mean, just like two remarks before I get into the methodology, that we are going through a very, very particular moment where this work that we have been developing together is very important, is of a crucial importance. Why? Because our economy is going through a transformation phase. And an old model is collapsing and a new model has to replace it. And it's very important that today Ali is offering a vision that is laying the foundation of a productive economy. We all know that the old model is collapsing for political reason, but it suffered from structural problem. And I'm very satisfied that in this policy agenda, we have addressed this structural problem and we have laid the foundation of a productive economy. And this is the vision. Guys, your vision throughout the year proved to be the right one. I do remember when some were like claiming how much was important the fact that the monetary policy that was in place, the high interest rate, and your voices, the voices of President Fadi and all the team was, I mean, fighting and shouting and claiming that we need policies more oriented to the productive economy. Unfortunately, these voices were not heard enough, but today I think you're on the right side of history. This is one. Secondly, it's very important that Ali is presenting this agenda because, as Paul was mentioning, the international community is looking for stakeholders, is looking for partners, because our government institutions, let's face it, are going through a crisis of legitimacy, especially after October 2019 and what followed. And it's important that an institution like yours is here standing with a clear vision, with a policy agenda, and that has identified the priorities and that working on. So these were my preliminary remarks. And now to the methodology of the policy agenda, how we develop it. Actually, we had a choice at the beginning. Either we go by sector, by vertical sector, by vertical industry, or to focus on the enablers for all the industries, for textile, for electricity, IT. And the choice was to focus on the environment, the enablers that are supporting the whole industry sectors. This is why we have identified 10 pillars. 10 pillars that are the real enablers of a productive economy. When we talk about enablers, we talk about the right fiscal policy that has to be in place in order to better serve the economy and to better and to help the transition towards a productive economy. We're talking about the monetary policy. What kind of monetary policy we do need? We're talking about the human resources, what kind of training, what kind of education we need. We're talking about what we call the Industry 4.0. That means all the technology, and we did not ignore key issue like artificial or new trends like artificial intelligence, quantum revolution. Everything has been addressed, has been discussed. So we have identified 10 pillars. Paul, if we can go to the executive summary just to show the audience these 10 pillars that we have identified. So while Paul is getting to the slides that shows the 10 pillars, so the way we did, we had like
there you go. I think it's on the screen now.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the way we put together the information, first of all, there were a phase of desk research. There has been a lot. There is actually a lot of documentation of work that has been developed by Ali. And we relied on this tremendous work that has been developed throughout the year. Dr. Fadi just mentioned one very important work that has been developed. And we did not ignore key documents that have been developed either by the international community, like the SADR documentation, or the McKinsey report developed by the Lebanese government some years ago. We did rely on the latest publication of the IMF, the World Bank, and the last economic plans of the government. Ali did not agree on all the recommendations developed by the government, like, for instance, the Lazar plan. I mean, that offered a great diagnostic diagnosis of the financial situation. However, it lacked the vision to help this transformation towards an economic or productive economy. So we relied on all the work that has been developed in the past 5 years by Ali, all the recent reports developed by the international agencies, namely IMF, World Bank, and the last economic plans of the Lebanese government, including, of course, McKinsey. That is very important for our work in particular, in that sense that it was focusing on the real industries that offers competitive edge for at the national level. So once we did the desk research based on the documentation I just listed, we went through a one-to-one interview with what I like to call the Ali champions, because Ali is actually a bunch of very knowledge people, of industrialists, and that who have developed tremendous know-how. And we did interview, we did more than 40 interviews, actually. It's an opportunity to thank Gael, who was championing this project with me. And we did like at least 40 one-to-one interviews. And after this one-to-one, and we did it for every pillar, we had like at least 3 to 4 interviews with Ali people, and some of them are expert in the field, like for Industry 4.0, we had the interview with Karine, when it comes to the monetary policy, we had interviews with key members of the ALIs. So, and we came up with a recommendation. And after that, we had like the task force. We had a task force in order to do the synthesis of the information. So this is how our methodology was developed in these 3 phases. Now, when it comes to the deliverable, so we wanted actually to, after stating the issues, the challenges that each pillars is facing, to present our recommendation in a short-term recommendation. It's not a low-hanging fruit or a quick fixes, but something that is urgent, and it is what that is within reach. So in a way, if you add up all the short-term recommendation, you can come up with a plan for the first 100 days of any government. And then we tackled in the long-term section, the long-term recommendation, the structural reform that has to be put in place. For instance, if we tackle the access to finance, we say that in the very short term, the central bank should free the funds, the current funds allocated for industrialists. On the long term, this was on the short term. On the long term, we issued recommendation on how to develop the capital markets in order to better serve the productive sector, how to set up a specialized fund for this private sector. Let me, if you want me to stop at this level, instead of going pillar by pillar and reading the recommendation, maybe Paul or President Fadi or anyone want to do any remarks, to build on what I said, and what I can go
Sami?
through an example afterwards.
Dr. Sami, I think it is important, in my view, to just, if you want to go fly over, if you want, the policy agenda to give a sense of what are the, I mean, we have them now on the screen, yes, but it's important, in my opinion, to show how much of a holistic approach it is. And so if we can go through the topics really shortly, obviously,
Okay.
we're going to go into them. It's I mean, the policy papers, each topic has a policy paper. Those that have been already developed, we're talking about 20, 30 pages each, and so we're not going to go into them, obviously, right now. But just to give the attendees a sense of that this is not just, you know, a bunch of topics that we added on. As you said, it could be the short term, let's say, proposals could very well be, you know, for any government that actually wants to do a change, it could be their 100 days let's say, first 100-day plan. Though it's important, in my opinion, to just fly over to show the attendees, first of all, the structure of this agenda. So if you want to call it the way that it has been developed, not the methodology, but why is it, you know, we did it as a one-pager, so that this one page should end up at the desk of the minister or the person in charge, whomever that be, and always keep it on his desk. You know, he has that one-pager, you know, try to grab his attention. He sees the short-term solutions, he sees the long-term solutions all the time. And if you want to actually implement something, we have the policy paper to back that up. So if you want to, at least that's what I propose. That
so let's go through it. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, maybe that summarizes all the recommendation, but let's go very rapidly from your side, because you're handling it, how the whole document look like. This is the fiscal policy page.
So
and then I will put my PowerPoint presentation to go through the.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is, for instance, the slide that we're seeing, the fiscal policy. Here in the page called background, we identify the issues we're facing. When it comes, for instance, to the fiscal policy, we're addressing the key, the structural deficit at the fiscal level. For instance, the high number of civil servants and employees, and in the recommendation we're saying that this has to be rationalized. We're talking about the necessity to reform the pension plan. We're talking about the necessity to address the electricity deficit that is still funded by the government. And at this level, this was as well developed and addressed, and not only in the policy agenda, but in a policy paper that we have developed, focusing on the infrastructure. And
if I may, just a second, Sami, if I may, I just wanted to point out again the format here. The format is quite important here. What we're looking for here right now is this document, which is just a two-pager at this point, recto verso, to be able to have it sitting on the desk of the person who's taking the decisions. We know that their attention span is extremely low. But again, this is, if you want to call it the agenda. If you look at the accompanying policy paper, as Dr. Sami is saying, it's a deep dive going into the details of how to implement it, how to look at it. We're not just talking the talk, we're actually walking the walk. We're telling them, this is how you do it. Don't give us any excuses, lame excuses. We did the desk research, we know it works. We did we checked with the experts. As Dr. Sami just said, the methodology was quite clear on that level. And most importantly, we have it written down for you to just use it and move forward.
Yes. So this, when it comes to the fiscal policy, and so after having identified the key challenges, so we come up with the recommendation. The recommendation, as we were saying, were divided into in two sections, the short-term recommendation and the long-term recommendation. Can we go through the second page of this, Paul, please? So for instance, in the, I mean,
can you see it or not?
No.
We're in access to finance here. So if we go back, fiscal policy background, so we're looking at the problem statement, key obstacles, short-term recommendation, long-term recommendation. That's the format we're going forward with. Now it's access to finance. Do you want to go over them, or you want to put your presentation?
Let me go through my presentation to go through the content. Now they have a clear idea how the documents, how the document look like.
Yes.
You have to disable
my sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you.
Okay. Are you seeing?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the 10 pillars we were talking about, listed in like priority fields. So, and we talked about the financial, the fiscal policy, the necessity to reduce the budget deficit, to necessity to reform the public pension scheme, to reduce the amount of public workers, and of course to reform the electricity sector that accounts for like 11% of the public spending. And we actually we addressed what the necessity to reform the tax system. And so in the short term, we insisted on like the necessity to have the budget on time. This is something that doesn't need skyrocket effort, but it needs discipline, and it costs little but produce a lot. To put the electricity sector reform in action in order to gradually eliminate its fiscal deficit and free the funds that were promised by the SADR conference, and for instance, and implement the reform of the pension scheme that is already prepared and ready to implement. It was prepared by the World Bank. This is something a government can take the decision about like in very rapidly, because all the work has been prepared. So this is on the short term. For instance, on the long term, we're talking about boosting, putting into practice this law that was voted in 2017, the PPP law. And by the way, up to now, this law was not implemented one single time. Although it's a key achievement for the Lebanese economy, for the interests of Lebanon. And up to now, this law is 4 years old now and has never been implemented for one single project. We're talking about the necessity of implementing full-fledged tax reforms that aims at boosting the public sector and reducing social inequality by enhancing progressively the income tax, adopting measures to increase tax simplicity, and to put in place the electronic tax collection. And here, in terms of recommendation, we're proposing like providing tax exemptions for startups and SMEs. For the access to finance, part. This is key part, especially nowadays with the liquidity crisis that we are going through. The short-term recommendation is to release the industrialist funds through ad hoc vehicles from the bank, the commercial bank, to be able to invest in industrial projects and turn them into productive fund, and to increase the scope and the potential of an existing vehicle, which is the oxygen fund that you all know about. When it comes to the long-term recommendation, we're talking about the necessity to having an established financial institution focusing on the industrialist sector, and the necessity to develop or modernize the capital markets. What's important at this level here, this is the recommendations that of the policy agenda. We didn't talk enough about the policy paper, because this is this complement this work, and this is a very important additional work we have been developing. We have already 4 policy agenda that go, every policy agenda goes into the details of what is listed as bullet points or as priorities in the policy agenda. This is not the subject of the webinar today, but because at the first sight, you maybe some of you have can make the remark that this is too much high level. It's true, but let me tell you that this is now the policy agenda, but all the details and the teeny details are addressed in the policy paper that we have developed for now, 4 key pillars and key enablers of the industrial landscape. So let me continue. For the monetary policy, we all know that the mayhem we're going through at the monetary level, and the fact that the system is practically collapsing today, and how it's important in terms of short-term recommendation to gradually go to a floating rate at the first level, at least to unify this exchange rate that is creating a total chaos in the economy, and especially at the level, I mean, these are a very serious impediment of growth, plus it's opening the door for many speculation. And it's about time to unify this exchange, the multiple exchange rates prevailing in the market, and they gradually move towards a floating rate policy, or policy, fixed, a floating rate scheme as recommended by best practices, actually. On the long term, we're advocating the view of a monetary policy that supports a productive economy and not a rentier economy, as it was the case for at least the 20 last years. And this imperatively means removing the high real interest rate set in the past in order to attract capital, and to abide strictly by the قانون النقد والتسليف, the law of money and credit, that establishes and insists on the independency of the central bank. It's very important for the check and balances. The central bank should serve the productive economy, and its prime focus and mission should be to protect the purchasing power of the citizen, the Lebanese citizen, protect the lira, and it's not the bank of the public sector. This is in a nutshell. When it comes to infrastructure development, this is the fourth pillar. Here we have identified the key problem, and then for the short-term recommendation, we're proposing free of charge energy audit to industry to help them optimize their energy consumption. Implementing the concentrated energy offsetting fund. This is a series of short-term recommendations that the team came up with before the long-term recommendation that propose, for instance, to create a multi-purpose industrial zone. This is, I think, this is a very new. It's not a very new idea, but this is of prime importance today, and this is something that can be a building block for a recovery plan. This is something that can help develop Lebanon export potential, which is key in order to rebalance our economy and to rebalance our economy and our balance of payment. So, sorry, a long-term recommendation. Providing companies with fiscal incentive to encourage them to invest in the industrial zone. And so this is when it comes to the industrial zone. Then opening the electricity sector to competition through public-private partnership. And paving the way for a smart move towards the clean energy. And by the way, this the question of climate change that seems today on the top of the international stakeholders' agenda was at the core of this documents, and this is something we had inside all along the work we have been doing. So this is when it comes for the human resource. Maybe Paul, this is one of your key subjects, the human resource development and the necessity to develop a vocational training. I know this is your baby. Maybe you want to, I will give you the floor to tackle this issue, and then I will take it back to talk about the customs.
Thank you. I think someone asked from the audience asked as well, how can academia help, or how can they interact with us when it comes to this policy agenda as a whole? And I answered back saying that, first of all, our policy papers will be submitted to the academia for them to critically look at it. And if there is anything that they look at, I mean, the whole point of this agenda is creating a platform for this discussion and further improvement as we go. And that's important. We're creating a dynamic body. We're not creating something static where we hold on to our ideas. The point here is to provide the best possible outcome and best possible roadmap to recovery, as we call the document to start with. When it comes to the human resource development, I think that we have a big issue when it comes to that in Lebanon. While we have a very good academic infrastructure, at least until now, and it's vital to keep that going, it is also a reality that it does not suit the needs of the manufacturing sector, nor does it suit even the need for any economic sector that is based on reality. We have an abnormal number of academic students and practically none or very little in the vocational training. What we're aiming at is to revamp that. We need, typically speaking, if we look at countries that already are extremely successful, we're talking about Germany, we're talking about Switzerland, we're talking about Austria. The center of their success is their vocational training and vocational and educational sector. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but typically what we're looking at here is creating really a new approach to vocational education and linking that to the academic as not two competing, but two complementing sectors. We're talking about establishing something called the Swiss School Université Professionnelle, which is the ability for the vocational education to continue without having to go back to the academic curriculums, to continue and get higher education as well, even in vocational training. This is crucial. Today, one of the biggest issues facing the manufacturing sector is the inability to find employees that are trained, or even an inability to find employees just at that period. And if we consider that they're talking about 30%, actually 40% of unemployment, and we are struggling as manufacturers to find operators and to find employees as workforce, blue-collar workforce, obviously, it says a lot. It shows how deep the schism is between the labor market and the educational sector. And I think this is extremely important to tackle. I'm not going to go more deeper than that, but this is in a nutshell what we covered, and we propose clear solutions for that, a clear vision, credit-based approach, training, working partial employment while studying, getting paid for that. A lot of multiple solutions that were proposed that actually tackle the problem from a practical perspective. Back to you, Sami. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is, I want to say that we have been studying some international cases, and we've been using some benchmarks. When it comes to the vocational training, we dwelled enough on the German model. And so this is to say that there is enough academic and research depth into this work. Now, when it comes to the fifth pillar, which is the custom, I know this is from day one, the first meeting I had with the Ali board, I knew that this was a prime concern, the customs, the smuggling that's taking place, and how it's being a killer for their industries and their productive units. And so we've been recommending, of course, for the government to better control the border, and but more on the long run, how is it important to establish the anti-dumping law, something that is in phase with the World Trade Organization guideline, and the necessity to advance the World Customs Organization efforts to revamp Lebanon's custom, according to Lebanese best practices, and the necessity as well to equip the customs authorities or the custom system with the capacity to enforce proper surveillance when it comes to equipment and software and know-how. Now, this is a key. This is, I will not reveal a secret saying that we are today in the phase of developing a policy paper on this pillar, which is boosting export. This is key. This is a #1 priority for any government to come. if they want to really, if they are serious about the road to recovery. This should be the number one concern. And this is offered today an opportunity for this country, an opportunity to turn the current crisis into a leverage for a better economy. We do know that there are some success stories in the past years. I mean, people and industries who are exporting, who are exporting and competing on the international markets. I know, President Fadi, this is something that that is of a great importance and of great concern of yours. I have been listening last year to one of your presentation at a symposium, and I learned a lot from this presentation about how many, I mean, we have some industry with key competitive edge, but they need the capabilities to support their breakthrough. And we've been here on the short term looking for ways to expand and boost the Oxygen Fund. This is a great initiative that has been put together, I think, 1 year ago, late 2019 or early 2020. But more on the long term, we're proposing to create export incentives to exporters, such as supporting businesses with intensive energy, supporting freight costs for industrial and agriculture export, creating an export guarantee institution similar to SACE in Italy and COFAS. This is very important today. This is very important today. Establishing an export guarantee institution for countries that are not covered by the operating Arab insurance institutions. The necessity to engage the Lebanese diaspora using the network of economic attaché that were everywhere in our embassies. Increasing exports to Lebanon main trading partners, especially to the country from which Lebanon imports in large sum. For example, raising export to Europe to reach $1 billion annually after 3 years. And these, once more, these are titles. In the policy papers, you can see the details on how to turn these priorities into action plans. Okay. Boosting exports. Now, the legal framework. This is as well a key enabler to create the legal environment that is conducive for business, that is conducive for production. The need to implement the key obstacles here is the need to implement draft laws that have not been implemented and that could benefit the industrial sector, like the public procurement law. Yesterday was a key achievement for those of you who are following the news. What the Lebanese parliament did yesterday was, I think, a great move forward. And public procurement law, although it's not 100% ideal, but in my view, and I think that you share this view, this is a quantum leap. And we need such a law. We need as well, like this independence of the judiciary law to pass, the anti-corruption law or the anti-corruption committee and strategy to be adopted. I mean, all these recommendation or structural reform that we need. Some of them have been prepared, but nothing has been enforced yet. And I think this should be top priorities on Ali's agenda. E-government. The e-government, the short-term recommendation is to streamline construction, manufacturing, and other type of permits. And then the necessity to streamline the export procedure that today are still too lengthy and too complex, and passing the executive regulation associated with the law 81 on electronic transaction and personal data. More to the long-term recommendation, and we're proposing to transform the relationship between industrialists and government by implementing user-centric e-services such as e-portal for industrial licenses at the Ministry of Industry, and adopting innovative technology as a means of achieving economic returns, adopting a national digital government strategy. And some of this work is already in place, but needs to be pushed and enforced and implemented. And the necessity as well to build a database to validate procurement indicators related to efficiency, transparency, and economy. This is proprietary, intellectual proprietary of Ali. So let me stop here. We went through the 4 pillars, the 4 enablers. Any remarks, any suggestions, any comments?
Dr. Sami, I think that we have been interacting a bit with the audience, answering questions by the Q&A, using the Q&A function. So if the audience would like to ask any questions regarding that, they can use the Q&A to ask those questions. We'll be happy to answer that. Just to give a small overview or a small note on the e-government before leaving the floor for Karim to ask 2 more poll questions. Estonia as a country has been a pioneer when it comes to e-government. Right about now, I think 95 or 93% of all governmental systems are e-government based solutions. Voting is e-voting, IDs are electronic, everything is such. There was a study that showed a difference between establishing a company in Estonia versus establishing a company in a country close to what we have in Lebanon, which is a old French system. And in Estonia, you need approximately 4 minutes to establish a company. And you do it online. And it takes 4 minutes and you have a company running. My question to all the attendees would be, how much time would it take the best of us to establish just a blank, empty company that does nothing, just a company? We all know the process and how complex it is and how awful it is and how we need to go through multiple bodies. And I mean, it's a hassle like no other. In Estonia, you establish the company, you link to it a bank account, and you're up and running as a proper company overnight. You have access to all the government services. And this is tremendous. This is tremendous because it gives so much information. It reduces corruption to practically zero. So there are matters that are not for sure only manufacturing centered or centric. And this is important just for us to show as an association that we're not only looking at, Dr. Fadi said, we're not only looking after our interests. Of course, we do look after our interests. This is our job. But our interests lie in the interests of the country, and it lies in the interest of the economy at large. So we propose solutions that will fix the economy at large, not just solutions to fix the manufacturing sector. Back to you, Karim, if you would like to. There were two poll questions that you wanted to ask, and then we'll leave it to Dr. Fadi to wrap it up.
Sure. Thanks, Paul, and thank you very much, Dr. Sami, for this very comprehensive presentation of the of the titles in the agenda. I mean, if we were to present the entire agenda, I think we'd need like a 3-day seminar to get in all the details. But as you mentioned, the strategy behind this is to capture all of the policy priorities and to organize them by short-term, immediate, actionable, practical, relevant priorities versus longer-term, longer-term growth and development and so on. And then there are of course, the policy papers that provide roadmaps and action plans on actually how to implement this. One thing that I want to highlight is I don't want to underestimate the amount of hard work that went into this effort, and that's also planned. This is only the beginning of it, or actually not even the beginning, because for a lot of these issues, those are long-standing ALI issues that as you mentioned earlier on, as Dr. Fadi mentioned and as Dr. Sami mentioned, these are long-standing issues. Added to them further issues that are relevant to COVID and are relevant to economic crisis and all the economic hardships that are being faced by the country. So basically, it's and the most important thing as part of this process is that it's informed by high-level expert analysis, as Dr. Sami and his team and Gael and others, and as well as grassroots real industrialists who are in the field, who have factories, who are employing people, putting food on the table, and responsible for a big portion of the people's livelihoods. There was a comment on the chat, on the Q&A function. Someone mentioned that, well, how relevant are these in the highly politically charged and divided situation that's in Lebanon right now? And I invite Dr. Fadi and everyone and Sami and Paul to comment on this. But like one comment that comes to mind when I think about this is that, I think of many examples from Yemen to Latin America to Asia even, where in situations of crises, it's the private sector that pulls together, bridges divides, and focuses on national interest and the economy, which really influences everybody's lives. So anyway, without further ado, I would like to present you with a question. Let me see here. On your assessment of what you heard so far. Okay, so the question here is, how do you evaluate ALI's policy advocacy agenda based on what you heard, the format, the topics, the way they're laid out, and the policy papers that build on them, its topics and recommendations? The first answer option, unrealistic, and includes major gaps in identifying the overall policy priorities and setting clear recommendations. Second option is a good start, but needs further research of the policy issues and investigation of the appropriate policy recommendations. And the third choice is it's comprehensive in addressing policy priorities for the industrial sector's resilience and recovery, and includes actionable, clear recommendations. So I'm just going to give it another 3 seconds here. Okay, and we are okay. I want to share the results with you now as well. So 41% says that it's a good start, but needs further research and of the policy issues. And this is actually a process that's ongoing right now. We have, as Dr. Sami mentioned, we have a couple of policy papers already developed on the key pillars, the key enablers, that go into great detail, and we will be more than happy to share. It's going to be on ALI's social media, on our website, and it'll be shared with all of you as well post the webinar, both the agenda, the COVID report, and the policy advocacy papers when they're ready. And the plan going forward is to continue to develop more policy papers, more action plans based on this agenda that's based on further stakeholder engagement. And by stakeholder engagement, we mean government, private sector, civil society, media, all stakeholders that really have an interest in improving the economic situation, especially for the industrial sector. And 59% of you said it's comprehensive agenda in addressing policy priorities for the industrial sectors, resilience recovery, and includes clear, actionable recommendations. Thank you for your feedback. This is really helpful both for SIPE and for ALI in providing feedback. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fadi and my colleagues for further remarks. And then we have one more last poll question on the overall evaluation of the session. So I leave the floor to you if you want to take it, Paul, or if Dr. Fadi wants to go first.
You can go ahead, Paul, then I'll intervene if you want.
Yeah, I think Dr. Fadi should wrap it up when we finish. I think that regarding the remark that you brought up, again, I think I answered it, but I'll answer again. I think it's extremely important. I answered it in the Q&A, but I'll answer it in live. I think it is extremely important to draw our strategies and have a clear vision ready on the get-go. And we're going to be able to achieve some of it as the situation is unstable. But at least whatever we're achieving, it's part of a broader, more holistic program, instead of being just ad hoc solutions that in a piecemeal approach that solves one part, but maybe makes the other one even worse. So the idea is, yes, of course, we do not kid ourselves that tomorrow morning we'll have a working group in the government that is going to take the policy agenda and go by it one by one, as Dr. Nader said, that as a 100-day plan. But in the same time, it is our duty to have that plan ready. Should it happen, then we are ready. We cannot wait for this to happen so that we get ready. By the time it happens, and we know very well how it works in Lebanon, it's either completely broken down or suddenly everyone wants to work. And at the moment when they want to work, they bring in some weird half-cooked plan, and they start doing that, and they make more damage than if they didn't do anything. I think it is important in that sense to have a proper plan ready for them. As soon as a new government comes in, they'll have the documents on their table, and we'll hope that they'll take action based on that. Dr. Fadi, it's back to you. I think they were quite eager to hear from you, your view on the session, and maybe let's say, a couple of notes on hope for the country and how we can move out of this. And this is important for all of us.
Thank you. I want to thank Dr. Sami and for a very comprehensive and incisive recommendations on a complete platform. Just to reiterate our confidence in Lebanon, yes, we believe in Lebanon. We believe that we can do something. Let me remind everybody that we had in 2019, we had outstanding financial resources, $264 billion in banks assets with respect to a meager GDP of 56. So we are aspiring that today, with all the situation, we still have resources in Lebanon. We can go forward. Indeed, we have all what it takes. We have a very strong diaspora. We have champions. I call Lebanese industrialists. I used what Dr. Herman Simon in Germany calls the industrialists in Germany, the hidden champions of the 21st century. So our industrialists continuing preserving their enterprises in Lebanon and also present all over the world in industry. Not only our exports are reaching the world, but our industrialists are present, leading even then institutions from Lebanon. This is a strength that we have. We look forward that we want to participate fully in the recovery of Lebanon. The recipes, various items, action plans have been put forward, but yet the most important thing is our drive, and above all is we have all what it takes, but one factor, we are lacking the confidence. We are lacking now the trust in our institutions. We are lacking the trust in our political body, which, as I said from the beginning, our crisis has three components. Of course, identity, governance, and socio-economic. We are ready. Industry is a booster for all of them. We can, industry, when it works, we are boosting our identity. We are boosting our governance by the way we work, and for sure the socio-economic. So we are ready, and I don't want to put all the Lebanese economy in the hands of industry alone, but there is an idea. We are proud that when industry works, we are a booster for everybody else, including trade, including imports of raw material, of machinery. So this is why we firmly believe that Lebanon deserves more. Our youth deserve more. I feel ashamed that we are exporting more and more of our competencies and our young generation. Let's try to keep them here. We had a structural issue with that before, and now it is of course aggravated by what is happening. And I thank Dr. Nader for reminding everybody that we have been calling in the past that we have the possibilities, we have the potential. Let us not lose it. And unfortunately, nobody was listening. Our GDP was meager in its development. Nevertheless, our debt was developing at rapid pace. We mentioned the 215 program. Since then, our debt grew by more than $20 billion. I don't want to say how much, but more than 20 billion. Had we given some attention to our productive sectors, I'm sure we would have relieved the whole economy. Just to keep it on a positive note, I would like to say that, again, we firmly believe that Lebanon can. We have still what it takes, despite all the losses. We have been bombed, our companies have been bombed, we have come back again. We know that there are massive losses at a national level, but yet if we can put together an economic program and face up the situation, when we have confidence in the system, we can draw enough resources with our diaspora, with our local people, to come back again and offer a future for our young people. And this is what we want to do. And we are grateful in this process that we have minds that are helping us, like Dr. Sami. And we also are grateful to Saib, who is also assisting us in this drive. When we talk as industrialists alone, people perceive us as looking for our own interests. But when it comes from a leading economist and such institutions, it is more the economic aspect, the economic role that is put forward. So again, I ask everybody that we together, we hold on. Industrialists have shown that we have been able to confront all the problems with determination, with looking forward, and again I say, with all the problems we are moving forward. Just to give you an example, and not to make it sound like I'm only talking on Tobawiyat, let me just remind you that even, for example, you mentioned the oxygen, the Cedar Oxygen Fund. This is a quick solution, a permanent solution, and a true solution. This has been put forward in association with the association, with leading Lebanese success stories around the world, and it is functioning. So despite the problems, despite what is going on, we are able to put in parallel some solutions. I know that we brag about resilience, we brag about our resilience. Too much of it has conducted the crisis to go on forever. So I wish at this time we face up the situation. I hope that it is time to say enough is enough, and let us put forward our potential, because the more time is passing, the more we are losing potential. So again, I thank all my fellow friends at the association, all the industrialists, for what they are doing. They are not investing money in industry, they are investing themselves and their families in industry. And I'm sure that this will make Lebanon a better place for all of us. And thank you all for all your contribution and for your participation.
Dr. Fadi, I want to thank you for your leadership and your commitment and the entire board of ALI's leadership. I want to thank Dr. Sami for his great expertise and hard work, and Paul and Talal and Caroline and all our audience today. Thank you all very much. And we're going to end with one last poll question, and that is about the overall assessment of the session. And the question is, how do you rate this event overall? Is it timely and provided important information that you found valuable? Was it not relevant in the bigger context of what's happening in Lebanon, which it's actually similar to the comment that one of the audience members asked, and did not provide valuable information? And we commented on this, or is it okay but could be better? And I'm going to share. Thank you very much for your feedback, and 100% found it timely and provided important information that was valuable. Thank you all for your time. And again, thank you, ALI, for your service to Lebanon's economy and industry, and looking forward to furthering this great partnership. Goodbye, everyone.